O.J. Brigance's football story was never simply about the games he played. Long before he became a Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl champion, he was an undersized Houston linebacker who had to persuade coaches that his size did not define his ability. His professional journey eventually carried him from Rice University to the Canadian Football League, then to the NFL, and ultimately into a remarkable second career inside the Ravens organization. His life also became closely associated with ALS advocacy after a diagnosis that, according to medical expectations, should have dramatically shortened his life. Instead, Brigance remained connected to the Ravens for years while helping other families facing the same disease. On August 17, 2026, the Ravens announced that Brigance had died at age 56 following a 19-year battle with ALS. O.J. Brigance was born Orenthal James Brigance on September 29, 1969, in Houston, Texas. His birth date is recorded in NFL and football records, and his professional career would eventually make the number 57 especially meaningful to his identity. Growing up in Houston, Brigance attended Willow Ridge High School, where his path to major college football was far from guaranteed. He was not regarded as one of the highly recruited prospects who normally received a long list of Division I offers. In fact, Brigance later recalled that Rice University was his only Division I scholarship offer. That detail is important because Rice became the launching point for virtually everything that followed. He accepted the opportunity, played linebacker, and developed into a 3-year starter. By the end of his college career, he had recorded a school record 367 career tackles and earned All-Southwest Conference honors. He also graduated from Rice with a degree in managerial studies in 1992. His professional career did not begin in the NFL. Brigance entered the Canadian Football League, joining the BC Lions in 1991. He spent 3 seasons in British Columbia before moving to the Baltimore Stallions. The CFL chapter proved crucial because it gave him the opportunity to establish himself against professional competition when the NFL had initially passed him over. With the Stallions, Brigance became a prominent defensive player and helped Baltimore win the 1995 Grey Cup. That championship would become an intriguing part of his later football legacy because he eventually won the Super Bowl in the same city. The NFL opportunity finally arrived with the Miami Dolphins in 1996. Brigance spent 4 seasons with Miami and was twice selected as a team captain. His leadership was recognized beyond the Dolphins, too. In 1999, he received the NFL Players Association's Unsung Hero Award and the Ed Block Courage Award. Those honors were given before the illness that would later define much of the public understanding of his life, making them an interesting reflection of how teammates viewed him even during his playing career. Then came Baltimore. Brigance joined the Ravens for the 2000 season, the year that produced one of the most dominant defenses in NFL history. His statistical role was not that of a superstar, but his value on special teams was significant. He recorded a team-leading 10 special teams tackles during Baltimore's Super Bowl run, and in Super Bowl XXXV against the New York Giants, Brigance made the first tackle of the game for the Ravens. The play became a small but permanent piece of franchise history. Baltimore won 34-7, giving Brigance the second major championship of his professional career after his CFL Grey Cup. There was an unusual twist to his football career after the Ravens. Brigance continued playing after leaving Baltimore, spending time with the St. Louis Rams and New England Patriots before finishing his playing career in 2002. Rather than leaving football behind, however, he returned to the Ravens in 2004 in a front office position focused on player engagement. This became a major part of his legacy. His work involved helping players prepare for life beyond football, including internships and opportunities involving high schools, financial institutions, and real estate organizations. The Ravens' player development programs received NFL recognition during his tenure. That second career makes Brigance particularly unusual. He was not simply a former player who remained around the team. He became a mentor and administrator who worked with younger athletes on issues that extended beyond the field. The Ravens media guide credited his programs with helping players develop life skills and described him as an important contributor to the organization's player development mission. In 2008, he even earned an Emmy Award as the host of the team's weekly television program, Ravens Report. His personal life became intertwined with his public legacy through his marriage to Chanda Brigance. The couple met in Houston and married in 1994. Chanda became much more than a spouse watching from the sidelines. After OJ's ALS diagnosis in 2007, she became his primary caregiver and eventually a major advocate for caregivers and families affected by the disease. The Brigance Brigade Foundation identifies Chanda as its vice chairperson and OJ as its chairman and co-founder. One lesser-known detail about their family life is that OJ did not have biological children. In an NFL feature about his faith, family, and football, Brigance explained that mentoring players had provided him with a meaningful experience of fatherhood. He described watching players develop from college athletes into professionals, husbands, and fathers as deeply fulfilling. That perspective helps explain why player development became such an important part of his life after his playing career ended. The 2007 ALS diagnosis transformed the direction of both OJ and Chanda's lives. ALS progressively damages nerve cells responsible for voluntary muscle movement, and Brigance eventually became dependent on a wheelchair and assistive technology for communication. Yet he continued working with the Ravens for years after his diagnosis. The longevity itself became extraordinary. He lived with ALS for approximately 19 years, far beyond the commonly cited 2 to 5 year average life expectancy from diagnosis. In 2008, OJ and Chanda established the Brigance Brigade Foundation. Its mission was not simply to raise awareness. The organization focuses on practical assistance for people living with ALS and their caregivers, including equipment, accessibility modifications, financial support, and resource guidance. The foundation says it has helped hundreds of families. Its programs also recognize the enormous demands placed on caregivers, leading to initiatives such as Chanda's Caregiver Corner. The number 57 became part of that charitable identity. Brigance wore number 57 during much of his football career, and the foundation's signature event became a 5.7K race. In 2025, the organization held its 13th annual 5.7K championship race and 1.57-mile family fun walk in Maryland, continuing a fundraising tradition connected directly to Brigance's jersey number. His relationship with Rice University also remained strong. The school continued to recognize his example, and former Rice figures described how his connection to the program endured even after ALS had severely restricted his physical abilities and speech. His eyes and expressions remained a recognizable way for people around him to see his enthusiasm for the school and football. There is also an interesting championship detail that can easily be overlooked. Brigance possessed championship credentials from 2 different professional leagues. He won the 1995 Grey Cup with the Baltimore Stallions and the 2000 Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens' own media materials have also credited him with 3 championship rings, including 2 Super Bowl rings, because the organization presented him with a ring for Baltimore's 2012 championship despite his not being an active player on that team. His story eventually reached beyond football and charitable work. In 2013, Brigance published Strength of a Champion, a book describing his experiences with faith, football, and adversity. He later received the George Halas Award from the Pro Football Writers Association in 2014 for overcoming extraordinary adversity. The NFL had already recognized the effectiveness of his player development work, but the Halas Award reflected the much larger personal struggle that had entered his life. As of August 18, 2026, the most significant recent development is no longer a rumor. OJ Brigance has died. The Baltimore Ravens announced his death on August 17 after his long battle with ALS. Reports identify ALS as the illness responsible for the final chapter of his life, although the public reporting does not establish a more specific medical mechanism beyond complications associated with the disease. There has been understandable public speculation following the announcement, particularly because Brigance had remained a visible symbol of resilience for nearly 2 decades. However, there is no credible evidence in the current reporting that contradicts the established account of his death following his long ALS battle. Claims suggesting a different cause should therefore be treated cautiously unless supported by the Brigance family, the Ravens, or a reputable news organization. The factual record is already extraordinary without speculation. Brigance was diagnosed with ALS in 2007 and continued contributing to the Ravens and the ALS community for years afterward. OJ Brigance's life ultimately became larger than the statistics attached to his football career. He was the player who received only one Division I opportunity, the linebacker who crossed the border to establish himself professionally, the Grey Cup champion who later became a Super Bowl champion, and the Ravens employee who remained committed to player development after his playing days ended. He was also a husband whose wife became his caregiver and fellow advocate, and a mentor who regarded guiding young athletes as one of the most meaningful forms of fatherhood available to him. His final years brought severe physical limitations, but they also produced a lasting foundation dedicated to helping people living with ALS. His death at 56 closes a remarkable personal chapter, while the programs created in his name continue the work that became central to his life.